Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka KBeth Bookish, and on today's video I'm talking you through my 2023 stats overview and just having a bit of a chat about the year in general and checking to see if I actually hit any of my goals from the previous year. So let's get into the numbers, shall we? I feel pretty good about my reading last year. I didn't read anywhere near as many novels as I had kind of hoped / would normally, but it was the year that I really got back into manga, and I know Ren on their video recently said exactly the same thing, that it was like the year of manga for them. And honestly, yeah, same. It was just a really good manga year, and you can see I've started a new collection of manga, and up here is all manga, and it was a good year for manga for me. So I'm really happy that I got back into it. I have all of my numbers written down, so I'm going to try to not keep looking down, but if I do, I apologise. In total, including manga and my regular novels, I got to 96 books, which is the best year I have ever had. I was kind of at the end wanting to try and hit 100, but then I was like, why am I forcing myself to do it when I've already hit my best goal? And it was like, yeah, I wanted to hit 100 just to say that for once in my life I'd read 100 things. But then I realised it's not a competition. I'm not fighting with myself. I don't need to do that. So I ended up not. But yeah, 96 books, and I was really, really happy with that. Of those 96 books, 51 were novels, 33 were manga, and 11 were graphic novels. And if I look at the previous year, manga was only something like 17 or 18. So I doubled the amount of manga that I read, and that's going to double again this year, especially as I've got the 100 manga challenge that I want to do for the year. Overall, those 96 books equated to 27,898 pages. And I also did 93.65 hours of audiobooks. Breaking it down into like my method of reading, the biggest number, and still the biggest number and always probably will be, was my physical reading, and I read 56% of my books were physical. 10% of my reads this year were audiobooks, which is up like 6% on last year, so I'm really happy with that. And then that meant that 33% of my books were ebook. I'm really happy with those ratios because I do want to get more of my physical books read, although this year I would like to focus more on my ebooks because I now have, I think, double the amount of ebooks than physical books, so I'd like to get to those. For genres, surprisingly, 99% of the time we all know fantasy is my top, but this year it wasn't my top genre. This year, my top genre was romance. I know. Who would have thought? I didn't. 27% of my books were romance, and I think a lot of that was manga. A lot of the manga I read were like romantic, and I did go through a bit of a romance binge at one point, so I was definitely reading way more romantic, lovey-dovey books. And then in second place was contemporary, which again, not what I normally go for, but again, with romance, most of that was contemporary, and a lot of manga tends to be contemporary, so that's probably why. And then we had fantasy, which was 20%. So fantasy is still up there and will never not be up there, but it was surprising for me to find out that it wasn't like the first or second place. I was like, oh. And I just had, for some reason, I just wasn't as excited about fantasy last year. But maybe this year is the year I get back into it again. 7 were arcs. So obviously I was quite lax on my arcs last year, but still more than I thought I did. In terms of star ratings, I didn't feel like it was the best year for ratings. Like, I usually get a lot more 5 stars. 4 stars tend to be my biggest category, and that's the same this year. I don't give 1 stars because for me, if a book is bad enough that I'm going to rate it 1 star, it's usually a DNF. And so unless I did finish it and hated it with my entire being, I think in 5 years I've given 2 or 3 1-star reviews. So it's very rare that I give those, but I did give 8 2-star reviews, 19 3 stars, 56 4 stars, and 13 5 stars, which again, I thought I'd only done about 8 or 9 5 stars, but it turns out I did 13, so I was quite happy with that. And then when we break down into sort of authors and representation and things like that, 55% of all of the books that I read were queer.
Hell yes, they were.
Which surprised me. I thought it was going to be a lot lower. I thought it was going to be like 30%. But no, again, a lot of the manga I read was queer manga. And of that queer, breaking it down further, 55% where it was the main characters were queer, and then 45% of those books were just where someone somewhere within the book was queer, so there was queer representation. And I was like, that's still fantastic, because then that means that 25% of my books were queer main characters, and 50% of my books were just someone somewhere in the book is queer, and I'm really happy with that.
Me too.
But the one that I am kind of disappointed at myself was the disability rep. I specifically said that I wanted to read more disability rep and also read more physical disabilities than mental health. That didn't happen. Only 36% of my books were disability, which is still a good number, considering there are many readers out there who that would have been like 1 or 2%. So I'm still happy with that. But again, of that, most of it tended to be sort of PTSD, anxiety, depression. But I did have 6 death rep, 2 spinal cord injury, and 2 chronic pain reps. So I'm really happy with those. And for some reason, I didn't read anything with ADHD rep. In terms of BIPOC, 46% of my reads were written by BIPOC authors, which again, I think 90% of that was because of the manga, and 90% of manga is Japanese authors, and Japanese people and Japanese authors are BIPOC. So I'm like, well, that's where that number came from. So I still want to improve on that number in terms of novels this year. And then for authors, overall, I read 68 authors throughout the year. 46% of those were people new to me, and 54% were authors that I have read before. So I just kind of spent the year going back to my favourites. And then my most read authors of the year, again, surprisingly, as with fantasy, where it was like I expected that to be number 1 or number 2, it wasn't. Nalini Singh is also not in the top. With a total of 5 books each, we have Yuki Firmino, who is the author of I Hear the Sunspot, and Carrie Vaughan, who is the author of the Kitty Norville Werewolf series, and I read 5 of those books last year.
I remember that.
Like, done, ding, done, yeah. Ding, done.
Every message. Finish another one.
And then for authors, I read 4 books each. So we have C.S. Pacat, Alice Oseman, Julie Kagawa, and Nalini Singh, because there's always going to be at least 2 from her every year. And then Kohei Hirokoshi, who is the author of My Hero Academia, came in was the final one that I read multiple books of, and I read 3 of his books. So those are my stats. Now to quickly look at the goals that I set and whether or not I hit them. Spoiler alert, I think I hit maybe 1 of these goals, but I'm still really happy with my reading. And I feel like even though I didn't hit those goals, they were kind of more like guidelines. Like they're not exactly, I don't have to hit them. It's just these are kind of, I set them more as I would like to do these, not I have to do them. So the first one was to hit 70%, to end the year with 70% rating on NetGalley. I'm at 50% and it's dropping every day because thanks to someone going on a NetGalley binge the other day, I then have gone on a NetGalley binge and requested a whole bunch of books. My very first reading goal of the year was obviously the big one, like the NetGalley, the overall books, and I set myself the goal of 75 books. I hit that in September, so I did hit 75 out of 75 and ended up with 96. Next was to read more physical disability rep than mental health. I've already said that I did not hit that one, unfortunately. Then it was to read 10 chonkers that were 600 plus pages long, and all I could do when I reread that was laugh, because the longest book I read at all last year, I read 2 books that were exactly 568 pages, or 569, and that was Bloodmarked and Saint's Blood. So Yeah, I didn't even hit any books that were 600 pages. I wanted to finish 5 series, and I finished exactly 5 on like the day before the end of the year. I finished my 5th series. So the series that I completed, we had Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller that I completed after I think 3 years of starting it. Villain Era by Luna Pierce, which I started and finished in 2023. Same with the Shadow of the Fox trilogy by Julie Kagawa. I started and finished those. I did like one a month back to back. Then we had My Brother's Husband by Gengaro Tagame, where I read the first one in 2022 and the second one first one in 2021, then the second one at the end of 2023. And then probably the series that's been on the longest is the Geekorella series by Ashley Poston. I think I read the first one in 2019 or 2020, and then finally finished the final one in November of 2022, so 2023. So yeah, I did hit that one, so I'm very happy with that. I wanted to read more sapphic fiction, but I read exactly the same. I read 6 last year, I read 6 this year. 150 hours on audiobook, I got 93 hours, so definitely one that I want to massively improve this year. I wanted to read a book award shortlist, but then very quickly into the year I realised that actually I wasn't interested in that. I just kind of saw Shah do it and I was like, oh, that looks like fun. And then was like, actually, that's really not me. I don't like being forced to read books because someone says I should. And I was like, no. So if I do anything like that in the future, I think it'll be read the books I'm interested in from a book award shortlist rather than try to force myself to read all of them. 5 non-fiction or self-help / development books. I read 1 and I gave it 2 stars, and that kind of put me off for the rest of the year. 20% own voices. Unfortunately, the core pile spreadsheet was updated to no longer include own voices as an option for you to check. So I just completely forgot that I'd even set that as a thing. But this year what I've done is in the notes section, I will make a note whether a book is own voices so I can still track it myself. 25 releases, 2023 releases, I did 11. So again, could have had a much bigger improvement if I'd have actually read my NetGalley books. There is a theme. 6 big fantasies, I read 1, and that was the continuation of this amazing series right here, The Greatcoats. And I read the 3rd book, but no more. 1 book club per month. I think this lasted 1 month and then I just kind of faltered off. And then the big one for YouTube was to hit 750 subscribers, and as of recording I'm currently sat on 977. So I knew I was waiting for that. So, I set 750 was kind of like what I really wanted. 1,000 would have been amazing, and we were so close. But as always, it was the journal video. Whenever I do my reading journal setup video, it always helps boost everything. And Adventure-a-thon brought a lot of new people to the channel, and I'm so grateful for every single one. And I want to continue that growth into this year. As you can see, those goals I did really badly at hitting, but like I said, I kind of tend to approach them as more these are a wish list rather than a must do or a to-do list. And I find that it's meant that I had a much more relaxed approach, and I didn't feel like a failure when I was doing this. In fact, I was laughing because I was just like, this is ridiculous. But I wasn't disappointed because the reading I did do, I'm very proud of, and I'm happy with everything that I did. I only have 1 more video that will wrap up the finale of 2023, and that is my December reading wrap up, which will come tomorrow. But in the meantime, let me know in the comments how your reading year went. Did you hit your goals? Did you have a year like me where you you almost failed everything, but you were still really happy with your year? And yeah, just let me know in the comments. I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe, and until next time.